I'm ready.
I know.
No. I'm ready for fall.
I know.
Oh, all right.
Because I can smell it.
You smell it?
Mm-hmm. You started with the pumpkin scented and...
You broke protocol.
It's not my fault you ran out of the other scent.
You broke protocol.
We're talking about our Glade plugins and candles and stuff like that.
First of all, It's not Glade.
Whatever.
It's Bed Bath & Beyond.
Oh, I'm
this
sorry.
This is high-grade shit that's guaranteed to last 30 days.
Okay, we'll see about that.
Now more because you unplugged it.
Yeah, because it's way too strong, the smell.
It's so good. The protocol is... Hold on. Welcome to While She's Napping. I am Adam.
And I'm Cindy.
The protocol is that I don't consume or smell anything or burn or... What
you don't partake in anything pumpkin.
Dissipate?
Sure.
What is it? Yeah.
In
the air.
Dispense?
Yeah. Anything pumpkin until September 1st.
And I disagree.
It's a burn month.
I think it has to be after Labor Day.
No, because
Labor Day is the
burn
official
month.
end to summer.
Well, hold on. So I lived up to my end of the bargain. You said I can't consume or burn or, whatever.
Yeah, no pumpkin in the house.
That's not what...
Okay, sorry. You can have it stored away.
I can buy it.
Yes, sure.
To save.
Yeah.
To make sure I have it.
But you can't use it.
Okay, but here's the problem. I ordered you a Dunkin' iced coffee yesterday. You ordered the... Sorry, yeah, this is on you.
I didn't do anything wrong.
You ordered the the caramel iced coffee with skim.
Yep.
And they accidentally gave
me
you pumpkin.
pumpkin.
You could have sent my ass back out there to get a caramel,
no,
but you're
I wasn't going to be a Karen about it.
I'm going to have it.
It's fine. I wasn't going to send you back and have them have to make me a new coffee.
So therefore...
Okay. It's a sign.
We can now burn pumpkin.
That the dam has been broken apparently when it comes to the pumpkin spice things.
I have to buy 20 boxes of pumpkin cereal save until practically February.
I know. You go way too overboard.
No, what I do is I buy... I shit you not. I probably buy 5 or 6 boxes of Special K pumpkin. Mm-hmm. But then everybody we know, like my mom will buy 3 boxes, your mom will buy a box
because
or
you
2.
Make it sound like it's this like ridiculously difficult to come by commodity.
It is.
And so every time someone who knows you sees it, they're like, oh shit, I better grab some for Adam before it's gone. And then we end up with like 30 boxes of cereal.
The best. And it lasts me till February because that's the problem. They stop making it at like the end of October, early November.
I know.
So I need it. Pumpkin is the best flavor. It's not even close.
I like pumpkin. Don't get me wrong. I'm not in as much of a rush as you are to get through summer.
All right. So, hey, that's how we begin episodes.
So, hey.
We appreciate the feedback from the Mandela Effect episode. It has gotten a lot of traction, which we are appreciative of. And we've received a lot of conversation pieces, emails, comments, especially on the YouTubes. Look, if you have contacted us or left a comment on the Mandela Effect episode on our YouTube page or emailed us, and we didn't give you more of an in-depth response, I appreciate the fact that you might believe in this. We just don't. And that doesn't mean one is wrong or one is right. We just like to entertain this for the fun of it. It's not something we want to necessarily start to investigate our lives over or whatnot.
Right. We didn't do a super deep dive. I know that there's some really in-depth theories and research out there, people who have looked into this a lot more than we did. We were just kind of, wanting to react to the kind of the most popular examples and the ones that we were familiar with that resonated with us, and that made us scratch our heads a little bit. But at the end of the day, we think that most of it can be chalked up to some crazy psychological mind fuck.
Like I don't think I'm smart, so I just assume I don't remember things correctly.
Right, yeah.
Except for Tinkerbell.
And Shazam.
No, If you guys want to talk to us about that, because it happened.
Yeah, we still are open.
Anyways, if you're listening to this for the first time, we would like to welcome you to the show. If you see any episode in the archive or anything in our past catalog that tickles your fancy, we invite you to listen to it. But if you're here because you see that we are going to talk about the fat acceptance community, we'd like to welcome you. Whatever side of the aisle you're on in this issue, we'd like to welcome you. If you've stumbled upon this from Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Reddit, we hope you enjoy the show. And if you want, you're already here, you might as well subscribe to us. And moreover, if you're listening to us on Apple Podcasts, please leave us a 5-star review. It would help us out a lot. We are also on Spotify. We are on Stitcher. We're on TuneIn, if people still use that. Pandora, like I said, the YouTubes. Amazon is making their own podcast now.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
They're on platform?
Yeah, they're making their own podcatcher. We actually got an email from them.
Oh, really?
Saying, it's probably a generic to all podcasts. We're not special. But it was probably, just an automated thing because we're attached to Google with the Gmail. Mm-hmm. And they have their own podcatcher.
Yeah, I guess that was only a matter of time.
I don't think it's going to catch.
Maybe
Does
not.
anybody use Amazon Music? Really? It's either Spotify or Apple, I feel.
Probably.
Unless you're using a free trial.
Yeah, maybe.
I don't know if anybody pays for it.
Probably not.
No.
Unless it's like something that comes with Prime, like with ebooks and stuff.
I think you get like 3 months free. I don't know.
We'll see.
Anyways, you want to take over the socials?
Yeah. So we're on Facebook.com/while she's napping. If you're
We're on Facebook.com.
We're on the Facebook, on the interwebs.
Mom, we're on Facebook.com.
How do I get on the Facebook? Anyway.
How do I download Netflix? What channel?
I want to see that show on the Hula.
Yeah. What channel?
Anyway, I'm very tired. We forgot to mention that we probably have to change the name of the show because our daughter no longer naps.
She doesn't
apparently.
want to nap anymore.
Yeah. So we're tired. Anyway.
Facebook.com.
Facebook.com/while she's napping. And if the platform where you're listening doesn't have a rating and review system, you can feel free to leave us a review there on our Facebook page. We're also on Instagram @while she's napping, or on Twitter @she's napping pod, or you can email us while she's napping @gmail.com.
If you head on over to the Instagram now, you will see that I made a fucking sweet.
Yeah, do you want to mention why you felt the need to try to make that shot?
Because I'm a badass.
No, because I made it twice in a row the other day.
What,
and
the
you've been
other day?
Yeah, the last week. I have time. What is time? All the days blur together.
This was
I don't know.
probably 2 weeks ago.
Okay, fine. I'm not going to dispute you. My point is, I did it twice in a row, back to back, nailed it. And so you've been trying to one-up me. And just so happens that, I was like, well, no, let me get it on tape to prove that it happened. And of course, the first time I hit record, you got it in.
That's right. That's how I roll.
Yeah, but you didn't do it twice in a row. So
when I have an audience, I have to perform. Hey, so we'd like to thank people from the United States, Canada, Australia, the UK, Mexico, and Nepal. Nepal, man, what's going on? Yo, contact us. We would also like to give a shout out to our home state of Rhode Island, Massachusetts, California. What up? MySpace with you. Virginia, Florida, New York, Texas, Connecticut, Maryland, New Hampshire, Georgia, Delaware, you're new. Arizona, Illinois, Minnesota, you're new. Mississippi, you're new. Montana, you're new. North Carolina, New Jersey, Ohio, Pennsylvania, South Carolina, Utah, and parts unknown. Looks like West Coast, Washington.
Yet they were offended that you got them confused with DC and thought it might be Trump listening.
Anybody that says, yo, it's going to Washington, no one thinks West Coast Washington.
I guess. But I also think a lot of people just say DC if they mean Washington, DC.
No, because anytime they talk about the president has landed in Washington.
But yeah, but that's in context. Everyone knows that the president is going to be in Washington, D.C.
Well, what if he lands in Washington, West Coast?
They would probably specify because it's the president.
Right.
And the context tells you which one you're talking about.
Washington should be renamed Washington State.
Okay.
That should be the official name. You know, I'd feel like a dumbass.
If it already is.
Yes.
Kind of like Rhode Island.
Well,
and the part of our name that nobody ever knew, but now people are mad is being removed. Is that still happening?
It's not being removed. It's being put up. Oh, it's officially the state of Washington.
There you go.
Okay.
Okay.
That's the official name of the state. There you go. It's not Washington. It's the state of Washington.
So what is going on with Rhode Island's name?
They're putting it up on the ballot.
Okay.
To remove
so it has to be voted.
State of Rhode Island and province plantations.
Right. So it'll just be the state of Rhode Island.
Plantations implies slavery.
Right.
I would imagine. I think.
That's the idea.
I don't know anything about. I don't have a dog in the fight.
Well, most of the people don't know that that's even the full name of the state. I mean, if you even know Rhode Island exists,
right?
That's step one.
Hey, if you don't know Rhode Island exists, we have an episode about it.
Yeah, right. But nobody knows that second half, and nobody ever says it. It's totally irrelevant.
No, but you had a bunch of Karens.
Yeah.
You're changing everything.
Right. First, my syrup.
No one calls it. No one has ever said, "Hey, Adam, where are you from?" Oh, the state of Rhode Island and province plantation.
Yeah. Well, we'll see what happens. I feel like it's going to get changed.
Okay, so today, this is take 2 of this attempt. We're going to talk about the fat acceptance community. We tried to record this, and it ended up being, I don't want to say jumbled, but it definitely ended up getting a little heated. So I think the error in which the recording that no one else is going to know what the fuck we're talking about, I'm just talking about it anyway. We need to structure this better. So we need to differentiate between a couple of movements, and by describing the origin of the fat acceptance community, those movements were spawned. So there are, I think, 3 movements that we need to highlight, and of those 3, 2, we need to specify this does not apply to what we're talking about.
Okay, before you dive into those, I also just want to address terminology in terms of these movements are when they talk about like the people within this community, they're specifically talking about obesity, correct? Not necessarily people who are overweight.
I think the fat acceptance community focuses primarily on obesity in the medical term.
Okay, right.
But I think it does include overweight people as well in the medical term. But predominantly, this is focused on obese people.
Okay, so for the sake of this conversation, I think we should stick with that, because I feel like that it gets very muddy for me because I go back and forth between, I use it interchangeably, overweight and obese, and they're really not the same.
Medically, they are not.
Right,
Medically,
that's what
they
I mean.
are 2 different categories of excessive weight gain.
Correct. So I think we should stick with obesity. That's kind of a reminder to myself.
That's fine.
To not use those 2 different terms because they are different.
Yeah, if for some reason I sort of blur the lines, I'll try to specify what I'm talking about.
Okay.
But all right, so the first half of the show, I sort of want to define their position, how they came to be, and the second half of the show, I sort of want to respond to their primary, for what I have researched to be their primary positions and arguments.
Objectives and yeah, sure.
So what it is, it's a movement. The fat acceptance community is a movement made up of predominantly, if not entirely, women that claim fat people are targets of hatred and discrimination. They suggest that obese women are subjected to more social pressures than obese men. They also suggest that obese individuals are subjected to discrimination such as lack of equal access to transportation and employment, among other things. It's pretty vague what they mean, among other things. I would like that definition to be a little bit more detailed, but for the sake of just extrapolating from that first, initial definition, I don't necessarily see anything wrong with the first claim that fat people, in this case obese people, are targets of hatred and discrimination. Mm-hmm. I do understand why they would think that they are targeted for general mistreatment or
bullying or trolling or teasing as kids who are obese or overweight. Yeah.
So I understand why a movement like this would spawn, and I also understand why this is made. I theorize why this is made up of predominantly women, because of the social pressures, as sort of indicated in this definition, the social pressures that women have to experience as a result of body issues. So I am not blind to the fact that men have it way easier when it comes to having an expectation as to how to look compared to women. Women have an unattainable and unfair expectation driven by media, and I know that makes me sound so fucking woke, but driven by media to look a certain way, and if you don't, there's quote unquote something wrong.
Right. I think it's just the fact that women have always been sexualized for the purpose of marketing and selling things. I mean, beauty standards in that world have always been very high for women. And I think it's evident in the fact that most, it's not to say that men don't ever deal with body image issues or any sort of eating disorder or anything like that. But predominantly, I believe eating disorders mostly affect women.
Right. I would say that, when I was a child, back in the late 90s, early 2000s, especially with my teenage adolescent years in the 2000s, early 2000s, I didn't necessarily have, or nothing that I can remember, dealing with body issues. You can call them issues now. I feel like now I'm more conscious of what I look like in my mid-30s compared to when I was 18, 19. But that's because I'm just trying to achieve goals and stuff working out. It's a whole different story.
It's a health thing for you. It's not about how you look.
Well, I mean, like...
Well, it's a benefit, but that's how you look.
I want to make gains, baby.
I know, but I feel like you look at that as like a plus. That's a bonus.
Some gains.
I know. But it's primarily you're doing it for your health. And if you look better as a result, that's great.
Reps for Jesus. Anyways, yeah, so I do think when I was in that, adolescent period, there wasn't a lot of social pressures for men to look, young men in my case, to look a certain way. However, now with the birth of Instagram and how widespread the internet is now, I do think there's been an elevation in social pressure for young men to look a certain way. I'm not saying it's this at the same level as women or even before, but if you think, I'm just spitballing here. When I was an adolescent, let's say the social pressures on a scale of 1 to 10 for a young man to look a certain way was probably at a 2, whereas women were probably at a 9 or 10. Now with the birth of the internet in 2020, men are probably at a 5 or a 6 and women still at a 10.
I feel like women are at like a 20.
Yes. So even though there's been a growth for men...
It's proportionate for both, because both sexes have experienced the same growth when it comes to social media and how that influences.
So even if you were in this theoretical measurement, if we're to both increase by 10,
I think it's proportionate.
The growth is, but the unfair level of expectation is still higher in women. Right. So I can understand why the fat acceptance community would be made up of primarily of women for this. It can be traced back to the 1960s when approximately 500 people met up in New York to protest against anti-fat bias. And as you have mentioned to me previously, this was actually kickstarted by a man.
Yes, who's I believe his wife was obese, or overweight. He was not.
Oh, okay, so this was to sort of make her feel better for the lack of a better...
Well, no, he witnessed the struggles of her everyday life, and he kind of took it on himself to, I guess, be an advocate or an ally and start this movement. Okay,
so this is legitimately how it began. It's sort of a parallel to the hippies. So when the hippies started staging be-ins, BE-INS, to protest the Vietnam War, the first fat activists co-opted the idea. They staged their own event in Central Park and called it a fat-in. And what they did is they ate ice cream and burned posters of thin models. That was their protest. This movement, that whole kickstarting of that eat-in, or fat-in rather, this brought about the birth of the NAAFA, the National Association to Advance Fat Acceptance. This is considered to be the first wave. So there are 3 waves. As I previously said, there are 3 subsets of all this. I don't know how prevalent the NAAFA is today. It might not even be around, but this was the first kind of, hey, we have a platform that we would like to vocalize here. So from that, in 1972, some members of that group, the NAAFA, broke away from it and began what is known as the quote-unquote fat underground. This group espouse without irony the belief that social pressure and overwhelming medical opinion were perpetuating a campaign of, quote, genocide against fat people.
Yeah, that's pretty extreme.
It is extreme, but I'm considering the times. This is, right around the time where the hippie movement was sort of fizzling out. 1972, there was a lot of social movements that were starting to uprise. I don't know who was president then. I should probably know that off the top of my dome. I want to say maybe it was Nixon.
Maybe.
I don't know.
I can't remember either.
Yeah. But I can understand why these movements happen, because I also think this is when women started to vocalize things a little bit more in terms of social reform and in terms of recognition of basic, not women's rights that happened before, but maybe more in
I
the
think
workplace.
Women's right to vote wasn't that far before that.
Sure.
Yeah.
But I can see why this is sort of building momentum to empower women towards things.
Sure.
And I should note that this fat underground movement was primarily women, if not entirely.
Yep.
So I can see why this sort of gained momentum for people that might have felt marginalized at the time.
Sure.
And you can imagine that in 1972, compared to today, there wasn't nearly as many obese people. So this was probably a very small group of people, I would imagine.
I guess that just the way that it's described just rings like conspiracy theory-esque, like that the medical community is like overplaying the dangers of obesity in an effort to commit genocide against fat people. Like, is that what they're saying?
That's what they said.
Okay. Well, yeah, this is obviously not the present. Are they still around? Is there any faction of that group still around? Okay.
No, this is considered the second wave.
Okay.
And by the way, it was Nixon, so nailed it.
Yep.
These two movements eventually brought upon the Health at Every Size movement, the HAES. I want to say that this was primarily, or rather initially, brought upon in Australia. I could be wrong about that. Forgive me if I am, but it didn't take long for this to sort of globalize in a way, especially in Western culture. This movement involved a rejection to the scientific consensus regarding the health effects of excessive caloric intake, a sedentary lifestyle, improper nutrition, and greater body weight. So basically what this is telling me is that the Health at Every Size movement is a misnomer right at the back, because even though they're saying healthy at every size, what their definition is and what they're rejecting is scientific consensus regarding excessive eating or excessive caloric intake or excessive body weight. So it can't be at every size, because if it was at every size, they'd include those that are underweight or anorexic or whatnot, or people of normal weight, quote unquote, or healthy weight,
who may still have health issues.
Sure, or may not have any health issues at all.
But I
We're
think
saying
that's
healthy at every size.
Right. I agree. I think that the name is misleading when you compare it to that definition, but I think probably what they're trying to say is that you can't just assume solely based on someone's size in every case if that person is healthy or not.
I think they're saying something a little bit more of that, because they're saying they reject scientific consensus regarding the health effects of excessive caloric intake.
Yeah.
So
but that's a behavior. That's not, you can't always see that manifested in the way that someone looks, because I know people who are very thin but take in excessive calories, but they just don't put on weight.
Healthy.
I know.
So that's what they're saying. They're saying that the scientific consensus regarding excessive caloric intake is not necessarily a healthy thing to do. And excessive probably means more than 2,000 calories a day.
Right. Yeah.
I would assume this means not being a mega Olympic athlete like Michael Phelps, who needs to eat 5 or 6 cakes.
Oh yeah, that's a exception.
I'm saying of normal people with normal everyday lives.
Mm-hmm.
I think the scientific consensus is do not consume, or you ought not to consume, more than 2,000 calories a day.
For your lifestyle.
So you're not putting on excess weight.
Sure.
Especially if you're living in a sedentary lifestyle, which again, they reject that being a bad thing. They reject the scientific community having a opinion that having a sedentary lifestyle is poor for your health. They reject that.
So that almost sounds like it did take a seed from the previous wave of the fat underground. Yeah, because but it makes me, they're saying the scientific community is incorrect in their conclusion or their propagation of this idea that these things are bad for you. It doesn't ring as extreme as the definition of fat underground, which included the word genocide, but it's basically saying the medical community, the science community is overstating the risks of these types of behaviors and these lifestyles.
That's not how I'm reading it. I'm reading it that they're full on rejecting it, not overstating it. They're saying this healthy at every size community is rejecting whatever the scientific consensus is regarding these lifestyle habits, and that doesn't necessarily
so they're
mean,
saying that it's completely untrue.
Yes,
or they're just
overemphasizing
overemphasizing.
they're not saying
so that's even more extreme.
From my understanding of this definition, they're outright rejecting the consensus
that there's any truth to it or any connection.
Yes.
Okay.
The whole causation isn't, what is it?
Correlation.
Yeah. Isn't causation, is that what it is?
Right.
Yeah.
So they're saying they can sometimes be correlated, that these behaviors, overeating, sedentary lifestyle, et cetera, can be correlated with weight gain or unhealthy weight, quote unquote. Do they even say that exists?
I don't think so, because from my understanding, the healthy at every size movement, I guess their position is you can be obese and healthy. Whereas in the scientific community, those two terms, obese and healthy, don't compute with each other.
Right. And what can you then, do they believe that you can be, I don't want to say anorexic because that's the name of the disease or the disorder. It's not necessarily the person's state at that moment. But someone who is severely underweight as a result of an eating disorder like anorexia, would they say that would they say they're not necessarily unhealthy just because they're extremely underweight?
No, because this doesn't have any sort of implications when it comes to undereating.
Okay, so it doesn't address the opposite side of the spectrum.
No, that's what makes the name a misnomer. Misleading. Because it says at every size.
Right.
When what they probably mean is every plus size. And I'm not even trying to be funny. It would be more clear if they did that. But I do want to be careful when we talk about anorexia, because although there is and there are links to psychological issues when it comes to anorexia, for sure. No, like it generally comes with
it's entirely a mental illness.
Yeah, but it's also it turns into a physical illness. Like
it manifests in physical symptoms, physical results, but the disorder itself is based on mental illness.
For sure.
Compulsory things, OCD, anxiety.
Your body itself
is what's affected by the behavior.
Yes.
Okay, but I'm saying it's more than a link to something psychological. It's entirely mental health related.
Obesity is, by definition, by the CDC, an epidemic.
Right, but the state, what I'm comparing is the state of being obese is on the opposite end of the spectrum, is the same as the state of being under, whatever the word would be for severely underweight, because being obese is severely overweight. So being in a state of starvation.
Obesity as a disease.
I understand. Yes. So I guess it's a little bit different, because I also think that obesity can also be the result of behaviors very similar to the behaviors that are seen in anorexia and other eating disorders.
Sure.
An obese person, it could have, I'm not saying all obese people have eating disorders. That's not true at all. But I'm saying that could be why, that it could be linked to an eating disorder.
Sure. All I'm saying to you is that when it comes to the scientific consensus, they regard obesity as a disease and an epidemic.
Yes. But these movements are rejecting that entirely.
Right. Yeah. And spawned off of this, sort of branching off of this, is the fat acceptance community, who argues that obesity is 100% healthy. Not only that, it's a beautiful thing. Obesity is beautiful. The terms fat phobic come into play. If you aren't attracted to fat or obese people, you are fat phobic. If you feel uncomfortable around obese or fat people, you are fat phobic. If your doctor is talking to you about your obesity issues, your doctor is fat phobic. society in general is fat phobic in terms of how they look at fat people. So that is, in a broad way, a very non-descriptive or under-descriptive way of illustrating what the fat acceptance community believes. And that is sort of what I want to focus on. The healthy at every size, we didn't dig into it just now, but I think we recognize it, maybe in an implicit way, why it's sort of bogus, because the name in and of itself doesn't describe what they're actually saying. The term every size means all sizes, and they don't mean that. So I don't
Right.
want to
I think it just means that they think that you shouldn't assume someone's health solely based on their size on any end of the spectrum. But that's not what it actually says.
Right. And, the reason why I sort of disregard it is you can't be healthy at every size. If you're 800 pounds and you need to be lifted up by a forklift, and we've seen people on those programs that have to, you aren't healthy.
Right.
And that is a size.
Yes.
So you just can't.
Right.
So when it comes to the healthy at every size and the aforementioned movements that happened, 50 years ago, 60 years ago, don't necessarily want to focus on them, not just because they're not prevalent, but because they're sort of not relevant. Right now, the fat acceptance community is what I want to focus on. Mm-hmm. And we can respond to that after the break.
Okay.
All right. Hang tight.
So before we dig too far into our responses, I found another definition that's slightly different than the one that you gave, that's a little bit more broad, and I just want to get your initial reaction to this one.
Okay.
Maybe it doesn't capture everything, but I read that the fat acceptance movement is a social justice movement aiming to make body culture more inclusive and diverse in all its forms.
What do they mean by that?
That's what I mean. It's pretty vague. It's more succinct than the definition that you read. So at its face value, that doesn't seem problematic to me. It's not specifically saying obesity is healthy. It's not saying they're promoting obesity or glorifying obesity or anything like that. It's a very vague, pretty, like, to me, it's like a duh statement. Like, yes, we should be, our culture of what bodies look like should be pretty diverse and inclusive. There's no reason why there can't be representation. That's different from actively promoting or glorifying an unhealthy lifestyle, which is also different from just what someone looks like. Like, you can't know that just necessarily by looking at someone.
No, but when it comes to obese people, you can know that they are unhealthy by looking at them.
Right, but you don't know what that person does. You don't know. Maybe they've already lost 50 pounds and you don't know.
That's true. But
right, but
at
I'm saying
that moment of looking at them,
yes,
they are working towards health.
Sure.
At that
Yes.
moment, if you are obese, by definition, medically, you are not healthy.
Sure, but if there's an obese person who is actively exercising and is making progress and all these things behind the scenes, you can't tell that from one picture of that person. So I'm saying just by showing the picture of that person, you are not necessarily advocating for an unhealthy lifestyle, because currently in that moment, that person is not necessarily living an unhealthy lifestyle.
I do think that when it comes to those types of individuals, those that are currently obese and are working towards eliminating that from their life and going to the stages of being overweight and then of a healthy weight. I'm using medical terms here. Mm-hmm. More power to you. You're A+ in my book, but the thing is, when it comes to the vast majority of morbidly or obese people, that is not the case.
Right. And my issue from what I've read and heard about the fat acceptance community is that those types of people who fall into that category, who might be obese or overweight, who are living a healthy lifestyle, or working towards losing the weight or being healthier, whatever that means for them, are actively discouraged from doing that.
They are called fat phobic.
Right. They're saying don't succumb to society's pressures. You don't have anything to prove to anybody, which that's true. But if this person is doing this for their own well-being, for their own mental health, for their own physical health, who is anyone to tell them not to do that?
So this is, again, it's not a political movement, but this is a very left-leaning movement that is adopted. I don't see any conservatives that buy into this. I don't think there are any. They're mostly left-leaning, very liberal, far left-leaning, very liberal people.
I think it's a very extreme minority in any category that you identify, but I can understand. I mean, I think in general, liberal people, the left, are more inclusive and more apt to promote diversity and be accepting and all of those things. So I think those basic tenets of kind of what the left embodies, this is an extreme version of that.
So I've always operated on facts over feelings when it comes to things. If there is a medical fact regarding my current state of affairs, no matter how I feel about it and how I react to it, it's not going to change that medical diagnosis. So for instance, if I've been, and I'm not, but if I've been a cigarette smoker for the past 20 years and my doctor informs me, hey, you have black lungs, you have lung cancer, unfortunately. No matter how I feel about it, that lung cancer is not going to go away as a result of how I feel about it, right? Mm-hmm. You can't feeling your way out of a situation, right? If you're an obese person, the way that society, I don't want to say has adapted to you or that responds to you collectively in terms of certain pockets of the community, like restaurants, like airports, whatever, bars, whatever, individuals being sexually attracted to you or not. That is not their problem. That is your problem, person that's obese. That is not their current state of affairs. That is your current state of affairs. And I want to say right off the bat, I do believe everybody, no matter their size, should be treated with respect. Basic human dignity, I feel, is a given no matter what you look like. You ought to be treated with respect. Fuck looks, I get it. You shouldn't be bullied because of your size. You shouldn't be ridiculed. You shouldn't be picked on. Online trolls that go on and comment on your shit and say you're fat, you're disgusting. That's not called for. That's not okay. But what also is not okay is being obese. That is not okay. You cannot convince me that being obese is beautiful, is healthy, is a good thing. It is not. It will literally lead you to an early grave. There are no morbidly obese people in their 70s or 80s. Find them for me. Find them. They don't exist.
I'm not arguing that.
No, but they are. You can't perpetuate a lifestyle that is self-destructive.
Well, that's the thing. And every time we talk about this, that's where I always get, like, that's where the line gets crossed for me, is the active promotion. It's not just saying, so even this I feel like is a little bit of a misnomer, because when you say fat acceptance, to me acceptance means, yes, acceptance into our society in terms of, like you said, respect and dignity and all of those things. That doesn't, but that could also be interpreted as acceptance of your current situation and saying everything's fine the way I am. I'm not going to make any changes. I don't have a need to. But
if you're obese, you're wrong.
That's what I'm saying. Like, what do they mean by acceptance? Do they mean acceptance into our society in terms of just being treated with dignity and respect?
No, they also mean adjustments. So, for instance,
I know.
Like plane seats.
I know.
I shouldn't have to feel a certain way having to ask for the extra seatbelt. I should have a bigger seat. Or in a bar, I should be able to fit in this booth without the table pushing up to me. But that's not the restaurant's problem.
I understand that. I'm not saying that. But my reaction is, my only pushback to that is, What if we're in a situation of someone who's been overweight or obese their whole life, who's grown up that way from the time they were a child, and it's something they've struggled with forever, and they have finally reached a point where they say, I need to do something about this. Their doctor has said that they're at an unhealthy weight. They want to lose weight for their children, for their family, whatever the case might be. And say they've lost, like I said, 50 pounds or even 100 pounds, and they still have those struggles. It's like, okay, so do you not go out into the world? Do you not live life because you're obese, even though you're working towards changing that?
You adjust. You just adjust. You continue to go. I understand how that could be discouraging, but you adjust.
And I well, not just discouraging. I feel like it can be a negative feedback loop of like, I've been on this journey for a year or 2 years or whatever it is, and I'm still just struggling every day to just do normal things. Like I don't really know what the answer is for that. I know what you're going to say. I guess I'm just saying I have a lot of empathy for someone in that position, because it's really hard to have that continuously mess with your psyche while you're trying to already deal with whatever if there's underlying issues as to why you're in that situation in the first place. It's just a lot. That's all I'm saying.
But my response to that is just keep going, because it is not society's fault. It is not the restaurant's fault. I'm not saying it is. That you are like this. The bottom line is, at the end of the day, make no bones about it. Maybe this is me being insensitive, but you chose to eat that food. You chose to live that lifestyle. No, but I think there are people eat that.
But there are people out there, and I can't relate to this. Neither of us have ever been in this situation. We've both had our own ups and downs with weight and everything, but neither of us have ever been obese. Mm-hmm. But I think there are people out there who say that in their experience, I have tried. I've yo-yoed my whole life. I've been to specialists. I've been to nutritionists. I've tried every diet in the books. I've gone a year with like running every day or walking every day or whatever it is.
This is a theoretical, you're saying?
Yes, okay. Yes. And I'm just saying, I think people say, I feel like I've tried everything and nothing changes.
I would say, you're not telling me something.
Yeah, I know you would. I guess I just feel like I don't know what I don't know about these situations.
I would say because medically, scientifically, mathematically, it is impossible to eat in a caloric deficit. And I'm not saying it in an unhealthy way. I'm not saying consume ice all day and a strawberry. I'm saying if you put yourself the recommended caloric intake is in a day we have discussed to be 2,000 calories. If you're taking in 1,500 calories and working out every day and not straying from that, none of this cheat meal bullshit for these individuals, because I feel that there's a psychological loop to that if they have a cheat meal, it sort of triggers something in terms of sugar. This has been documented. Sugar intake makes you want to have more sugar.
Or constant deprivation of everything that you enjoy could lead you into a depressive episode and undo everything you've done.
My point is, in this theoretical, if you do that for a year and you stick to it every day for a year with no cheat, it is impossible not to lose weight.
I understand. I get that. I'm not arguing the science of what it looks like on paper. I'm just saying people are more complicated.
I understand. So when someone says this to me, I don't understand. I've been working out every day. I've been eating healthy and I haven't lost any weight. I would say, you aren't telling me something.
Right.
Because the science would suggest you're doing something that you're not mentioning to me, because what you're describing is physically impossible.
Right. I just want to make sure that we're not characterizing that as saying, well, if you're not losing weight, it's because you're being a fat ass and stuffing your face with fast food or something. No, I'm saying, what you're not telling me could also be you have a mental health issue, or you're in a bout of depression and you're not eating enough. Even sometimes that can have a backfire effect.
But I would say chances are you're binging here and there and you're not telling
but again, that could be related back to other issues. Yes.
I'm just saying that is purposely omitted from the story.
So, that's a whole nother conversation about people having shame over mental health.
For what it is, right? I don't have bald. I am bald, right? People don't have obesity. They are obese at that moment, right? And
yes, but I think there are a lot of people who are born, they've been that way their whole life.
Yeah. But my biggest problem about this is that if you aren't doing anything about trying to escape obesity, if you aren't, and you're saying, it's not me that's the problem, it's society, it's not me being obese that's the problem, it's the restaurant that doesn't have a big enough booth for me, or it's the airplane that doesn't have a big enough chair for me, or it's the fact that I am being looked at as I'm trying to struggle walking up the stairs. There should be an escalator here. No. That is your problem. That is not the institutions that you're saying their problem. That's on you to fix, not them to adapt to you.
Yeah. Well, I also think that we're not saying that if you're in that situation where you're at the point of, and I also want to make the distinction that we're talking about someone's individual medical issues, whether they have them or not, is their business between them and their doctor.
Yeah.
And that would be the only situation in which I would say, if it's none of my business, but just because we're talking about this, I would never say this to someone or imply or, impart my judgment. But if that's where you are, you're at the point where it's legitimately become a direct threat to your health and well-being, and losing weight could help address those issues. We're not saying that you need to be a size 6 and get a 6-pack.
You don't have to look like The Rock, or you don't have to look like, I don't know, what's a hot person today?
What, a woman?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't keep up.
You're asking the wrong person.
Is Cardi B hot?
Kardashian, one of the Kardashians.
Yeah, her. You don't have to look like her. Just don't be obese.
Right, I'm saying it's just, for us, it's all about health and being able to function in your life in a way that is fulfilling and being able to be there for your family. And I agree with the concepts behind these movements when it comes to being accepting of people's appearances and not being judgmental, because you don't know someone's story, you don't know their situation, you don't know their medical status just by how they look. But
yes, I do. I do know that person is obese.
I guess. Yeah.
I don't know what other diseases they may or may not have, like type 2 diabetes or heart
yes,
disease.
I'm saying underlying.
I know you are obese. Right. That is a health condition. Therefore,
in and of itself.
You are not healthy.
In and of itself, yeah.
Just so like if you stared at, I shouldn't say stared. If you looked at someone that's anorexic, automatically, your body and your mind automatically tells you there's something.
But there are also people who are very thin who aren't anorexic, who don't have any sort of eating disorder.
Very thin and anorexic.
But there are okay.
I think
this is what I'm saying. Anorexic isn't a state of your physical body. It's
sure.
A
I'm saying
mental disorder.
Sure. The most extreme cases of anorexia, I would say, and how your body responds to that.
Right. When if in the extreme cases when you look like you're starving.
Right. Most individuals would look at that person and say,
you're
this
unhealthy.
Isn't healthy.
Yeah.
Right.
I understand.
And I wouldn't condone being in that state or being obese.
I guess I'm saying someone who is obese and maybe lost 50 pounds, they may have, but the conversation between them and their doctor might be, you've removed the immediate risk that we were seeing before for heart disease or diabetes or whatever it is.
You have to keep going.
But so you are healthier than you were before. You've removed these acute immediate risks, and that's maybe a success in their book. It's not to say that they could still keep going or not or whatever, but I'm just saying you can't necessarily know what someone's progress has been just by looking at them.
I can't know your progress, but I can look at you and say, I know you're obese, and I know that means you're not healthy.
Or yes.
That's all.
Yes.
I'm not trying to make any indications as to if they have type 2 diabetes, although I think the number we saw is 80% of those with type 2 diabetes are
it's certainly
obese.
Linked. Yes.
Right. So
but it's not 80% of obese people have type 2 diabetes.
No. I'm saying the vast majority of those that have type 2 diabetes
yes, type 2
obese.
Diabetes is linked to weight.
And it's preventable. I think this is the diabetes.
Type 1 is not, but type 2 is.
So my point is that why are we glorifying a lifestyle that's dangerous, right?
But that's what I'm saying is just a picture of someone who is obese is not necessarily glorifying the lifestyle.
I do think that's not true. I think someone like Tess Holliday that's on the cover of a magazine is endorsing the lifestyle.
Because they actively discourage lifestyles that include healthy behaviors.
Right.
That's the problem.
And that's my point. The fat acceptance community wants to perpetuate this idea that being obese is beautiful. You're a beautiful woman.
And something you should strive to.
You're a beautiful woman. Your womanhood is what is beautiful, not your body. Which in most cases, that's true.
Yes.
I'm saying when it comes to obesity, that can't be true.
Right.
That
well, it doesn't
literally cannot be true.
It's not saying that you are less worthy or it says anything about who you are as a person or your character.
No, nothing of that.
Right.
It's saying that
physically
that is to me, and I think when we're talking about, you know, the scientific community, beautiful. It's not. It's when we're talking about beautiful, that is something that is worth striving for, worth, you know, gravitating towards. We don't gravitate towards ugly things. And I know beauty is very subjective. There are people out there that fucking love their obese women. They love their women big. More power to you, right? No, it's true.
Well, I think that's probably. I've also heard that sentiment as being pretty offensive to people who are overweight or obese. That the only way that they are viewed as attractive or beautiful is when they're fetishized.
Well, I'm sorry, that's kind of the case. There are not a lot. I'm saying
it's uncommon. I hear what you're saying.
When it comes to people that you meet that at that time are obese, chances are that person is not going to be attracted.
I know.
Flip it the other way.
I understand. No, you don't need to break it down for me. I get it. But I think that it's also because their argument would be that's our culture, that's our societal standards influencing how people see beauty.
And I'd say it's not, because when you flip it the other way, a morbidly obese man is just not attractive.
Okay.
I'm
not saying for either gender.
But I'm saying that's not society telling you that. I think there's something intuitive in most human beings that say, whoa.
Well, yeah, biologically, like you want, you talk about if you want to bring it down to that level, at a biological level, we're attracted to people who appear fit in that they can reproduce and successfully raise children and are healthy and strong and can provide, and on both sides. I'm not saying this is a man-woman thing.
Yeah, I got you.
I'm lumping all of the characteristics together that apply to both.
You fucked up.
How?
Me.
Well,
I don't know where your head was at.
Anyway,
this isn't an ism, right? And that's what they want it to be. They're trying to put it up to the level as a cultural ism or a societal ism, like racism and sexism. It's not. They're not even close to being on par, because when you're born of a certain race, we'll use black because that is actually what has been happening for the past millennia in this world. Black people are undoubtedly treated unfairly, and what is awful about that is they can't change that. They have no choice. Same thing with sexism. Again, I'm using binary terms here. You were born into the gender you have, right? And
sex.
Okay, yes, sorry. I don't know.
I know.
I don't know what I'm talking about when it comes to that. But and I mean no disrespect. I just don't know. When it comes to you being born male or female, is that better?
Yes.
You don't have a choice in that as your state of affairs,
your biological
when you were born.
sex.
You
Correct.
don't have a choice.
Yes.
And that is, if you're discriminated because you are that sex, that's awful. You can't. Yes. Okay. You can't change the way you were born. You can't change that.
Right. I understand. But there are people who are saying
morbidly obese.
No, not morbidly obese, but there are people who are overweight their entire lives.
I get it, but it still comes down to personal responsibility.
I think at a certain point, I agree. Yes, I agree. And this is where I'm saying that it's not saying that everybody needs to live up to our unattainable societal beauty standards of being a size, and I see even size 6. I would maybe like a size 0 is what they say, from the perspective of a typical model. But if you were born, if you've been overweight your whole life, you can still be overweight and manage your life and be healthy and that can be okay. We're talking about obesity.
We're talking about
that's
obesity.
What I'm saying. And I don't want that to get confused. I'm not saying everyone who's overweight or has a few extra pounds on them should feel guilty about that or feel like they they have to change that. I'm simply talking about obesity when because it directly affects your health. It's a state in and of itself.
Well, all right.
That is
So I'm saying if
your
you're
health.
overweight, we'll entertain this for a second. If you're overweight, I still think you should strive not to be. I still think you should maybe make small incremental adjustments because it has the tendency to lead towards obesity.
Not if you're living a healthy lifestyle.
I understand.
That's what I'm saying. But there are some people who are just naturally overweight. They've been that way their whole lives, and that's just the way their body is to a certain extent.
Right.
And as long as you are living a healthy lifestyle, you are aware of. I'm not saying you should need to deprive yourself all the time. Like, just because if you've been naturally overweight your whole life doesn't mean you should never be able to indulge in things.
I'm not saying that either. I'm saying if you're overweight and you're not active, you should probably think about getting active because there's a better chance you're going to go down the path towards obesity than stay in that state, right? So I do think that if you're overweight, you shouldn't be sedentary. I don't think anybody should be sedentary if you can help it.
Exactly.
If you can help it. I think
no matter what size you are, even if you're thin, you shouldn't be sedentary.
No,
if you're naturally, like we're talking about people who are overweight their whole lives from the time that they're kids, there are people like that who are rail thin their whole lives from the time they're kids, and even when they don't exercise.
We're talking about able-bodied people.
Yes.
I want to make that clear. But these people within the fat acceptance community are saying it's fat phobic if you're not attracted to obese people. If you reject someone because they're obese, if you go on a blind date or someone's hooking you up, and we hear this all the time, the quote unquote the fat friend, the third wheel kind of thing. Oh, I know a friend, it's been a long time since I even entertained the dating game, obviously. But saying, look, I'm not attracted to obese people is not fat phobic.
I think I understand what you're saying, and I agree with you. I don't think that's fat phobic.
You're attracted to just what you're attracted to.
But I don't think they're talking, and maybe I'm misinterpreting. I think that my interpretation is that it's bigger than that. It's not talking about the individual and saying you as an individual are fat phobic because you are not attracted to this individual person. But I think they're saying that's a manifestation of a cultural thing of fat phobia, that we generally, as a culture, as a society, don't accept this as in the same way, and people who are obese or who are fat are not are discriminated against and are bullied. I just think it's multi-layer. I don't think they're necessarily drilling down to the individual level like that. No,
but I do want to say, I want to be clear about this. I'm talking about seeking someone to establish a relationship with.
Yes.
Most men will fuck anything. I'm being serious. Most men, when it comes to just a hookup, will fuck anything.
Okay.
Just by and large, men in America aren't picky when it comes to who they're hooking up with. I think that's true.
Okay.
You don't think that's true?
I don't know.
I'm
thrown by the fact that you said anything and not anyone.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry. I'm saying any female of any size, any state of affairs, if it's just a hookup, I don't think they care.
Okay.
It's just a hookup. But when it comes to someone that you're dating and you want to establish a relationship with, I think you have the right to be kind of picky because
yes, but you should get to know the person because, like we talked about, I know when you're talking about. This is why it's so hard to differentiate. You have to say between overweight and obese, because if you meet someone who's overweight and you're like, I'm not physically attracted to you, I think part of that might be because in the back of your mind, you assume that person is lazy or eats fast food all the time or whatever. And that might not be the case.
It might not be, but chances are it is.
If the person's obese, maybe.
Chances are it is.
I just think that you should give people the benefit of the doubt.
Most obese people, I feel, aren't working to getting their circumstances better. Most. I'm
Probably.
saying there obviously
it doesn't mean they
some.
never have either.
I'm not saying that either. I'm saying most don't.
Okay.
So if I assume I'm single and I say, hey, I think you're a really cool person, but I can't envision being with someone that's obese, I don't think that's a form of discrimination. It's like if I said to you yesterday, look, again, I don't know the term, if it's little people or dwarf or whatever. Mm-hmm. I couldn't envision myself being with someone like that forever. I'm just not physically attracted to that type of person. It just doesn't, I don't know, arouse me. I don't know how to terminize this or terminology or whatever. I don't know what the fuck I just said. My point is that does that mean I have anti-dwarf or anti
No, I agree.
biases.
This is why I'm saying I don't think it's meant to be at such a drilled down individual level. I think they're talking about it in terms of cultural.
I get it, but there's a state of affairs that someone has, and if you're not attracted to that, it's an ism.
Yeah.
And
I disagree. I don't think it's an ism. I do think that there's probably a lot of people who are pretty shallow and judgmental and make snap judgments about someone based on how they look. You don't know someone's lifestyle necessarily. You don't know what they've been through. You have no idea where they are in their journey if they've been trying to lose weight or whatever the case might be. I'm just saying I just want to be,
I need to be open about this. Okay. So let's just be open about it, right? If I'm single and I'm looking for a partner to settle down with, I personally, and I'm just throwing this out there and people are going to get mad, but whatever, I'm talking obese women, I probably wouldn't get it up. I probably just wouldn't because I'm just not attracted to that.
I understand. I'm not saying that that's wrong.
They are.
I know.
That's what I'm saying. That is the core of this, is that they're
saying that that's influenced by our societal standards. That's what I'm saying. They're not saying that that's because of you. I think that's their argument, is that you feel that way and you're manifesting that because of what you've been told as to what is beautiful and what's attractive.
Why can't it be just something intuitive?
It can be. But I can kind of see where they're coming from as to where there's a nugget of truth there that our culture tells us what is beautiful and what is not. And I can't say that there's not an effect. That doesn't mean that you wouldn't be attracted, or you would be if those doesn't exist. I mean.
I can't buy that. To me, this is just pointing the finger and trying to justify, by and large, not 100% of the time, by and large, shitty behavior.
Right. Then that's where I draw the line, is that they're not just talking about your physical appearance and being respectful and accepting of people who look a certain way. They're actively discouraging healthy behaviors.
Yeah.
That's not okay. And telling people to strive for some. It's not just saying this is how you are. You should love yourself. You should feel worthy. You should feel confident, whatever the case might be. They're not just saying that and leaving it at that.
Well, I'm glad you said that, because again, if you aren't working towards removing your current state of affairs in the state of obesity, I don't understand how you can love yourself, because you're putting yourself more and more in a position where it's likely you'll be in an earlier grave than you would have otherwise.
Yeah, I think there's something to be said about the approach to that, of like having people feel ashamed of how they look or feel bad about how they look and focusing on their appearance or their size. I feel like that is a self-destructive way to approach it.
It's all about health. I agree. About health.
I know. And I'm saying, I think.
But obesity does come hand in hand with that.
I know.
I don't know if there is such. I know there's skinny fat. I don't know if there's skinny obese. I really don't.
I bet they're maybe not obese, but I'm sure there are at least overweight people. There are some people who are overweight and healthy, and people who are thin or underweight or average or normal, whatever you want to call it.
Unhealthy.
That are unhealthy.
Yeah. Or in terms of no medical diagnosis, I think
I'm saying I bet there are people. The skinny fat
person could have type 2 diabetes.
Sure.
And the overweight person
could be perfectly healthy.
Right. So my point is, in this, when it comes to these, I don't know, these perceptions of things, I don't understand how you can advocate a love for yourself and love your obesity, love your body. If you want to have a fourth piece of cake, have it. Who cares? No, I think that type of I don't know, encouragement can be dangerous.
It's self-destructive.
Because then you're constantly going to say, not just a fourth, a fifth, a sixth, a tenth, an entire cake. When does it end? When does the fat acceptance community say, oh, that's a lot, that you are consuming way too much food? Like, we've seen the picture of, it's circulated on the internet, you might know what I'm talking about, of a woman that's wheelchair bound literally eating a block of cheese.
Yeah.
Where does that say this is absurd? This needs to stop. This is not healthy behavior.
Right. What about that says I love myself?
And what about that is beautiful? I don't think that's a beautiful representation of what that specific individual could have otherwise been. Because
Sure,
when you're
but
wheelchair bound, what are you accomplishing? I'm not saying you have to be mobile to accomplish stuff, but it seems like there is a correlation between obesity, morbid obesity, I should say, in this person's case, and lack of sort of, I don't know, desire towards achievement. I don't know what this...
You don't know what their desire is.
No, I don't. I'm saying there's a correlation. I feel that it's not outlandish to me to think that specific individual who's eating a fucking block of cheese that's in a fucking motorized wheelchair, to say something about that tells me this person's not motivated.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's anything unfair.
I guess
about that.
I'm like, what do you don't know anything about that person's
No.
life,
I'm saying,
about what
does
happened.
the fat acceptance community have to say about a
Yeah, I
person
don't know.
like that?
Yeah.
Where does it end?
I know.
You
I
know?
agree.
And-
I get it. It's very there. I've always I think part of the reason why this has always been such a contentious issue between the two of us is because I haven't really understood or been able to admit that that it's beyond what I, in my head, feel like is a good message, like at its core, about like body positivity.
Body positivity
is not the same.
Different. Right?
I agree. So I feel like that's why I wanted to make sure that we kind of laid out the definitions early on, because it's been very gray for me, and I don't want to confuse the core of those types of messages that are helpful and positive,
Right.
and these very extreme, dangerous promotions of things that are just objectively not healthy.
Right. And I think the problem is, and I understand there's a lot of context here, but like I said, this is made up primarily, if not entirely, of women. If we heard obese men perpetuating the same shit, I'm telling you, no one would take it seriously.
This goes right back to what we talked about at the beginning.
I understand there's a whole historical
Yes.
context to this, but I'm saying if obese men came out and say, hey, we're getting rejected by women because of our size, that's not fair. I think more people would be inclined to be like, then just don't be obese. Like, you need to change your circumstances.
But again, the pressure and the stigma on men's physical appearance and this kind of like in the background message that you're there to please the other sex doesn't exist when you flip it around.
I get that.
But I think that's the reason why.
Sure.
I think that's something to do with it. You can't. I know what you're saying at its core, but this is what you do. You say, "Well, if we remove all of the context, then it's this."
I'm not saying that. I'm saying there's a reason why. If we look at it on a men's side and have the knee-jerk reaction of this is kind of absurd, if men were saying it. I understand there's historical context, but that doesn't remove the absurdity of what they're suggesting.
But when you add in the context, you can kind of understand why it makes sense to some extent.
Absurd.
No,
it's
I know the message. The extreme part of the message is, I understand that. I'm saying, but the motivation behind where this movement came from and why it's majority women, you can understand why that is.
Of course. I'm just saying, if we didn't know what gender primarily or exclusively was pushing this narrative and just read what they're pushing and what they're promoting, we would say this is absurd.
Okay.
That's all I'm saying. For me, it's I just don't understand how you can look at yourself and promote an unhealthy lifestyle and say it's beautiful and that is loving yourself. It's just not. To me, those types of messages don't make sense, and they definitely get lost in the weeds. And if you push that, and there's some sort of fighting back against it or resistance, you just yell fat phobic. It's kind of like with the anti-vaxxers, right? If you say, though your position isn't based on science, there's actually a lot of scientific evidence to debunk what you're saying, and they say, nope, you're lying, you're part of the man, you're part of the machine, you're part of the movement.
No, that part,
I would say, what? And that's when you present scientific facts to the fat acceptance community, and they yell fat phobic back at you. You're just plugging your ears.
That's what I'm saying. That's where
I
draw the line at where they argue with the medical facts and doctors who don't have a dog in the fight. Like, why would they tell you? You know
if
what
anything,
I like?
they would push it because things like McDonald's and Burger King's, it makes this country so much richer.
Monetarily.
Yes,
yeah.
that's what I'm saying. Why would we want to, and I'm saying if this was a conspiracy,
right?
Why would the CDC want to do something to try to eliminate that or discourage people from consuming that product? That doesn't, those two things don't mesh, right?
Right.
If you want America to be monetarily rich, you don't want this message out there.
No,
right?
I think that's where I draw the line, is the distrust and the disparaging of the medical community and trying to say that they are trying to manipulate you into something that other than like taking care of you as a person and taking care of your health. That's just crazy to me. I think that there's no reason why you can't be accepting of wherever you are in the moment, in terms of not letting it consume you every day about what you look like and what your weight is, but also listening to your doctor, trusting the medical professionals,
right,
and trying to just live a balanced, generally balanced, healthy lifestyle. You can be confident. You should dress the way you want to dress. I just don't think those two things are mutually exclusive. I don't think you have to hate yourself and beat yourself up and try to tell yourself that you can't ever indulge. You can't ever,
of course you
enjoy
can
things in life.
Yes,
that's what I'm saying.
Course.
But I feel like that oftentimes these two things are pitted against one another, that it has to be one or the other. And I don't see it that way. I think you can actively pursue and promote a healthy lifestyle, healthy behaviors, and also be completely loving and accepting of who you are in the moment and be confident in your body and whatever it looks like in that moment. Those two things are not exclusive. But I don't think
you should accept that circumstance.
But if you're actively living a healthy lifestyle, you're not.
No. But if you're morbidly obese, we're running in circles. If you're morbidly obese, chances are you're not.
Sure.
And if you're morbidly obese and this movement is encouraging you to love your current state of affairs
and to strive to stay that way, that
is hurting you.
Yes, I agree.
That is pushing an unhealthy message. So that is my gripe when it comes to the fat acceptance community. If you have any thoughts on this, we'd love to hear from you. If you want to send us an email, you can. If you want to remain anonymous, I'm not saying these are all faceless people. They're most certainly not. But I also understand these conversations can be uncomfortable if they're sort of in a public sphere. So if you'd rather talk to us about this, if you're a proponent of this movement and you want to be anonymous, you can send us an email at whileshe'snapping@gmail.com. Or if you just want to hit up one of our socials, you can at facebook.com/whileshe'snapping, facebook.com, Instagram @whileshe'snapping, and Twitter @she'snappingpod. And also, if you liked what you've heard, please subscribe to the show. We love interacting with everybody. We love the growth that this podcast has experienced over the past, when we start this in March. So 5 months, almost 6 months? Jesus. Mm-hmm. Wow. Go you. Sweet. So we're on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Pandora, YouTube, all your favorite podcatchers. We're there. You don't know what you want to talk about next week? You want to keep that as a surprise?
Yeah, we'll have to think about it. Or please send us suggestions, because we're on the fence.
If you guys want to hear us talk about something specific,
sure, let us know.
Yeah. All right. Well, until next week, we'll talk to you soon. See
Bye.
you.